Su historia de vida seguramente ha marcado su comprensión de la realidad. ¿Cómo todo esto influye en su acción ideológica?
So your life story has surely marked your comprehension of reality you have today. How has this also influenced your action, the ideology which you stand behind?
I was born in a country called Uganda. It's one of the poorest countries in the world. By the time I was 12 years old, our country fell under a brutal military dictatorship of Idi Amin. During that time, as a young girl, I saw terrible atrocities committed. Men being killed, women being taken by soldiers and raped. We were not safe as young girls on the street. We had to be very, very careful to keep away from soldiers because they took the law in their hands. So I grew up with a deep passion against injustice. I couldn't understand why all of us were suffering like that. By the time I was 18, I was an activist, trying to speak out. My parents taught me to speak out. And because of that, I had to flee the dictatorship and be a refugee in the United Kingdom. So my passion for human rights, for social justice, comes from a childhood of seeing the worst abuses. I know how bad it can be. So that has shaped my thinking. Then I became part of a revolution against dictatorship in my country.
Could I translate, Chris?
Okay.
Sí, sí, es que no va a poder ser consecutiva.
Lo que haremos es, perdón, sigamos con la entrevista y después la traducción. ¿Sí? ¿Continuemos? Sí, así lo cortamos.
You follow.
Yeah, I'm gonna follow.
You understand what I'm
A
saying.
little bit, but it's enough.
So they're saying to continue and then at the end we'll translate.
Okay. So by the time I was 18, I was a political activist, joining others to fight dictatorship in my country. I was part of a revolution. And in that revolution, we learned from other revolutions that were happening or had happened around the world. For example, our struggle was a protracted people's war. It was very much a Maoist kind of strategy. But we were also learning from the Sandinistas because they were also winning in their struggle, and ours came at the same time. So I became really a committed socialist because for me, there is no way this world can give wealth to a few and leave others living miserable lives. There is room for everyone to have a share. Equal opportunities are what I believe in, an equal chance for everybody. So my ideology is socialist, is feminist. And I am a happy person in Oxfam because Oxfam, my organization, fights for social justice, is part of the social justice movements in the world.
Desde que se crea Oxfam, desde la Segunda Guerra Mundial, ¿cuáles han sido los desafíos más importantes en su lucha contra la injusticia y la pobreza?
So since Oxfam has been created after the Second World War, what have been its biggest challenges in its fight against injustice and poverty?
Yes, our vision is of a just world without poverty. And we work with communities all over the world, working with them to find solutions to overcome poverty. But over the years, first after the Second World War, a lot of the work we did in countries such as Bolivia, I think we came here in the 70s, was to help to build services for people, schools for people, farmers to learn how to farm better, to get better incomes, and so on. But now, as our countries, developing countries, become richer, we realize that the challenge is not one of technical know-how. No, in all our countries, including this country, we see that the know-how is there, the resources are there, but what we find in many countries is that there is rising extreme inequality, that resources are captured at the top and are not used to benefit everybody. So we have shifted our approach. Our approach is now to work with local civil society and share with them the capacity to influence their own corporations and governments. So in many countries, we will be working with local partners, local organizations, sharing with them evidence of what works for women to improve their lives, what works to strengthen women in the parliament to make a good contribution, what works to end violence against women. We will do research, we will share our findings, we will share our global voice, because many of the problems our countries face are in the global system. So we bring activists together to have a global voice, to ask for global change, whether it's the World Bank, the IMF, the United Nations. We can bring activists together and take their voice to where power is. Because ultimately, poverty is about powerlessness. When people have their rights, they can have a good life. They can find solutions for their lives. So our approach is that of fighting poverty through empowering local actors, groups of women, groups of youth, cooperatives, different groups. We try to support them to claim rights, to make their lives better.
Usted afirma que Latinoamérica y el Caribe son la región más desigual del mundo. ¿Por qué esto y cómo lo combatimos?
You state that Latin America and the Caribbean is the most unequal region in the world. Why is it so, and what will change to fight it?
Yes, it is. It is the most unequal region. It's a region of huge natural resources. In that way, it shares that with, say, Africa, where I come from. But it is also a region, these days we use the word, where there is state capture. In many countries, a small elite has captured public policy. They make policies to improve their own profits, but not policies to lift all boats. Let me also share this, that Latin America, this is the irony of it, has in the last 10, 15 years been the only region that was reducing inequality. It's the most unequal, but it also has done the most amazing work to reduce inequality. Across this region, except for maybe 2 countries, Mexico maybe and Argentina, all the others were reducing inequality. And how were they doing it? There was a commodity boom. There was a lot of money coming in for natural resources. They were able to use that money to give education to all children, free, to put health care for all people. And in some countries, they were able to raise the minimum wage and give workers a good income. And they also rolled out social protection. These 4 things. And they also were taxing progressively. They changed their tax system to tax the rich more and give relief to the ones at the bottom. So these policies were popular here in the last 10, 15 years. They were bringing inequality down, but unfortunately we are seeing it rise again. Bolivia is one of the countries that had the most amazing progress over the last 10 years in terms of rolling out education and health and plowing the resource money back into people. So we know what needs to be done, but it's not being done because of state capture in many countries in this region. And around the world, it's the same problem. It's a global problem.
Llegando a Bolivia, tomando Bolivia, nosotros hemos luchado por una asamblea constituyente para que los derechos de los habitantes sean mínimamente respetados. Tenemos mayor participación en la Asamblea Legislativa, el reconocimiento de nuestros pueblos indígenas, entre otros logros que ha hecho este Estado. ¿Cómo ve usted el camino de nuestro país, este camino en construcción?
So now coming to Bolivia, in the last years we have fought through a constituent assembly so that the rights of all of our inhabitants, all of our citizens are minimally respected. Today we have a high female participation in the legislative assembly. We recognize our indigenous peoples, amongst other positive things that we have done as a state. How do you see us in this path of construction?
Honestly, I am amazed, and I have much respect for what Bolivian people and their government have achieved in just a span of 10 or so years. Huge achievements. And what I have learned today, I came to learn at a meeting with some feminists, is that women have made their rights, their equality, part of the wider project of empowering all the people of Bolivia. They told me that they see decolonization and what they call depatriarchalization as two processes that must happen at the same time. That is an innovation. It is really a very important innovation because it means that transformation of the society of Bolivia makes the equality of women and men central. That's very important. Many countries have made economic transformations, and then women came later to bring their problems to the table. Some countries became decolonized and won independence, like us in Africa. But then we found now we have to fight for our rights with our own progressives. So this approach is powerful for your people. Of course, now you have one of the highest numbers of women in politics in the world. I think you're number 2 after Rwanda. The numbers are important. My country too has quotas. We have maybe about 35%. The numbers are important. But the space and the ability to use the space is also as important. I was very surprised and excited to learn that you have a law here that is dealing with political violence against women. That is the first in the whole world. I've not seen it anywhere. Women suffer violence and harassment in the political space as in other spaces. But in the political space, because they are supposed to be powerful, it is assumed that they are powerful. They are not being harassed. But the truth is that they suffer, and that violence reduces their ability to function and to have an impact on public policy. So giving capacity to women in politics is a very important agenda, and I found here a lot of supporters. Oxfam is part of the organization supporting capacity of women in politics, but also tackling the attitudes of men. Men in politics, I was elected 3 times. I'm talking from deep knowledge of this. Men feel entitled. They feel entitled to govern because in tradition they've always been the rulers. And when they're in that space, they dominate. So tackling male entitlement is important. Challenging men to be equal in the political space is also important. It's not enough to talk to women. It's important to ask men also to change and give space to women. So I'm so excited about the progress in your country, and I wish the women in politics well, and I would advise them to make strong alliances with women in civil society. Their power will come from standing on the shoulders of the women out there in the communities, women who are leading indigenous communities, women who are leading youth groups. These are the ones who make them legitimate and powerful.
Cambiando un poco, el cuidado de la madre tierra es una prioridad de los gobiernos, debe ser una prioridad de los gobiernos. ¿Qué acciones se deben tener para ser consecuentes con esta necesidad?
So changing topics a little bit, taking care of our Mother Earth is a priority for governments. Which actions do you think should be advanced to be consistent with this requirement?
If I can talk globally, I think the two biggest challenges the world is facing, one is the challenge of climate change, global warming. All the governments of the world, all the leaders must take this seriously and make real their commitments, step up their ambition to keep the world from warming beyond 1.5 degrees. The scientists tell us that the window is closing, that if we don't make radical transformation of our economies and reduce carbon emissions, that the window will close, but it hasn't closed yet. So one of the big challenges is that the rich countries who caused this, they are the ones who polluted, must reduce their emissions quickly, forcefully. But even us, the developing countries, we need to grow, we need to have good lives for our people. We want to find the path that is of low carbon. This is going to cost us more, but we need to be committed to make our contribution too. And resources must also come from the rich countries to help us follow a low carbon path. So that's a big environmental challenge. But there is also, at a regional level like here and Africa, the depletion of our natural resources. This is of serious concern to me. I see big companies working with national companies, cutting down our forests, destroying our rivers and our lakes. And that worries me so much. We must have good management or stewardship of our natural resources. We depend on them. Millions of our people depend on them. So wise management of natural resources is important. And Oxfam is working here with some indigenous communities on this question of the stewardship of natural resources, to support them to have a voice, to be listened to in deciding what is the development model, how are we going to use our forests, how are we going to use our land, so that the people who depend on it have a say. It's very important. The governance of natural resources is a critical issue for our countries. And I see that Bolivia is taking this challenge very seriously, that indigenous communities are organized around their land issues. I think there is something here for others to learn. My country is just losing its forest. We have companies from the east and the west, Chinese companies, European companies, cutting down our forests with impunity. People cannot speak. People don't have a say. The companies are working with our elites to take our resources. So you have something good here you need to build on to ensure the lives of everybody.
Para cerrar, ¿cómo construimos un mundo más equilibrado?
And so finally, as a closing question, how do we, or what are your proposals for building a more equitable world?
Well, this one is the second big challenge of rising inequality between countries and within countries. This one, we are going to have to organize people power. We need people to organize in broad fronts to challenge the elites who are in power in our countries, because they have decided to collude with economic elites, with big business, and they make public policies to favor those. They allow them to dodge paying their taxes. Most of these big companies, they hide their profits. They put them in tax havens, in Panama, in Switzerland. The money is building up there, it's untaxed. And then when you ask here, why don't we have enough roads? Why don't we have enough schools in every community? Why? There's not enough money. But the money is there. It's just that the politicians are allowing them to go away with the money without paying for where they make the money. So we need to get our government to take back our power from the political elites. They are in collusion with economic elites. And for this, there is no solution but people power. The power that people in this region used to remove dictators, they must use now to balance their power with the power of those in office. We must reconstruct democracy. Democracy must work for the majority. It can't be for a few to come and impose austerity while a few at the top are funneling their resources abroad. That can't be right. So for us at Oxfam, we want to empower communities everywhere, workers, youth, all to demand. Companies must pay a living wage. Why can't governments make a law everywhere requiring companies to give a minimum wage, which then becomes a living wage? Why should a worker work all day and not have money to pay for their child at school, not have money to pay for treatment for his wife when she falls sick? Why? Because companies want to maximize for shareholders. That's wrong. That's wrong, and we challenge that. You know, let me end with this example. There are many companies that are there that work for the benefit of everyone, of the workers, of the suppliers, and who plow back resources into communities. I always give example of a company called Mondragon. It's Spanish. It is owned by the workers. It has a 13 billion euro turnover. It's in industry, it is in retail, it's in wholesale. This company doesn't allow the top executive to get more than 8 times what the lowest worker gets. There's a ratio of pay. This company, decisions are made democratically. This company plows back the profits into the company. We want to get governments which promote such businesses, not those which promote businesses like the ones which cut our forests, which dodge tax, which pay miserable wages to workers. That must be stopped. So I'm all for a second revolution of changing, of achieving true democracy. It's not a revolution with the guns, not anymore, but it's a revolution of people, people power, people insisting. That's what I want.
Thank you.
Thank you.